2025 is almost here, and today we're going to be digging into our market predictions for what the real estate market around Raleigh is going to look like next year, so stick around.
So in 2024, the real estate market has been in a slump, and this isn't just locally, but also nationally. And largely this has been driven by really high prices, historically high prices, and high interest rates. And so we've seen that both in the national market and the local market. So nationally, we've seen sales at the lowest point since 1995. Which is really astounding, honestly, when you think about, I mean, you're pushing back past the housing market crash in 08.
Right.
When you're looking
to think there was more sales going on in 08, which is like what everybody thinks in their mind is like the worst housing market in history. It's like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. So demand is at the lowest point nationally since 1995. Now, locally, we're doing a little bit better than that. Demand or sales are at the lowest point since roughly 2014. So kind of that post 08 recovery that we were going through.
Yeah, because it was really, it's not like it like immediately started in 2008. You know, there was like this effect that took like years, you know, like the first house I bought was in 2014 and it was so cheap and it was so easy to get it. So it's like so different. Like, so I could see how like, wow, to compare this past year to that year, like this 10-year difference is crazy.
Yeah, it is. So we've seen a pretty significant slump this year in terms of real estate transactions, which ultimately, like if you're a buyer or a seller, transactions do matter because that points to how much demand is in the market. And if there's not a lot of demand and you're a seller, you're probably not getting a lot of showings, you're probably not getting a lot of offers. And if there's not a lot of demand in the market and you're a buyer, typically your options aren't going to be as substantial as they might be in a market that's having more transactions and more movement. So that does matter.
All right, so even though demand has been lower in 2024, we have still seen prices continue to appreciate in our area, which is good news for for all homeowners. Yeah. You don't want to lose that appreciation, but I think typically I feel like there's been so many people that have been like waiting for this huge drop in prices to happen in the post-COVID world, and I just don't foresee any situation where things are going to go back to the way they were before the pandemic. That price appreciation is smaller annually than it was during the peak of the pandemic, but it's definitely still happening in some areas way more than others.
Yeah, so to kind of look specifically at some of the counties here, so looking at Wake County, which is Cary, Apex, Raleigh, Wake Forest, kind of that general area, Durham County, which is obviously Durham, and then Orange County, which is Chapel Hill and Hillsborough. So Wake County appreciated roughly 2%, a little less than 2% year over year. Durham County appreciated roughly 4%, just a little bit under 4% year over year. And then Orange County appreciated 10% year over year, which is pretty wild. Yeah. So you may be, if you know a little bit about the area, you may have heard Wake County's number and thought, well, hold on, I thought places like Cary and Apex appreciate significantly. And they do. There is an interesting trend happening in Wake County where new construction is pulling down some of that price growth, not because builders are necessarily lowering their prices, but because we're seeing a significant rise of more affordable new construction being built. So new construction essentially peaked in Wake County back in 2023 from a median price standpoint, and now we've seen a pretty significant drop. So Wake Forest is a great example of this, where we've seen a pretty dramatic drop. So mid 2023, we saw a median price point of new construction in the mid to upper fives. This year, the median new construction price is $450, which is just wild to see that kind of drop. So again, it's not because builders are dropping prices as much as it is that we're seeing a rise in more affordable new construction. So that's why that number in Wake County is lower than Durham County and Orange County. If you were just looking at resale, Wake County would be significantly higher than that. But in general, we're seeing price appreciation in the area across the board.
Yeah, for sure. And we did have this span of time in Wake County where there was so much luxury new construction being built. And I think it just comes to a point that's like, how how many incredibly wealthy people are going to continue moving to Raleigh. Like some of these homes in Raleigh were like over $2 and $3 million.
Yeah,
like,
and that still exists. It still exists.
For
it's
sure.
just,
but
it's
I think
more,
there was like a boom of it, like at one time, and now it's kind of like, okay, now we're getting a little more. That's still happening, but we're finally opening up some doors for like some neighborhoods that are a little more like on the average side.
Yeah.
Also, if you are looking to buy or sell in the Raleigh-Durham area, we are realtors in the area, and we'd be happy to help you. And you can find our contact info below.
All right, so what are we looking at in 2025? So nationally, the consensus is essentially we're going to see a rebound in both demand, and also we're going to still see some price increase. So the National Association of Realtors expects a 9% increase in transactions next year. So you can look at as a 9% increase in demand. And then it's also looking for roughly about a 2% increase in prices. But again, when you look at what we saw this past year, we typically outpace that. And we typically outpace the national average. And I think we will this year as well. But we'll get into more of the local projections in a second. Fannie Mae is expecting a 4% increase in transactions. So not as much as what the National Association of Realtors is looking for. And they're also looking for about a 3% increase in prices nationwide. So that's kind of what the experts are projecting. And a lot of this is going to come down to where do interest rates fall at the end of the day. That's going to be a big driver of demand. If interest rates continue, I say continue to come down. They're pretty sticky in the upper sixes right now.
Yeah.
But if they do make a downward trend, I think we'll see some higher numbers than even what these are projecting.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if the interest rates really do come down, they really have been sticking in that like upper 6 level, like close to 7 for a long time. They kind of dropped down a little bit in the fall, and then they came right back up. So just kind of unfortunate because I think people were hoping like, oh, this is like a trajectory downward, like it's going to keep going down, but I don't really foresee that happening unless something economically like really crashed this year. So we, and this is also a post-election year, which I know we released a video last week talking about all about, post-election years in the real estate market. But typically, sales and things like that do increase by quite a bit in those post-election years. So I think this year, nationally, I mean, those numbers that are projected make sense, if not even higher.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so what we think is going to happen in 2025, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but I think we can use the past to kind of determine what could this year potentially look like, and I think we are going to see things probably continue to, stay in high demand in the Raleigh market, but I think a lot of like what we're seeing in Wake Forest, where that new construction price is going to continue to come down, I think we're going to see that more in other parts of the triangle as well. I think that'll help kind of drive at least the new construction prices down a little, but I think that resale is going to continue to like really appreciate. There's something about resale homes that can be more appealing in a lot of ways for some people, that being like more mature trees, larger lot sizes, sometimes just like, I don't know, maybe a little more character in the house versus new construction. But there's also really appealing parts of new construction as well, like, not having to worry about replacing anything anytime soon, or having that affordability. In a lot of these new construction neighborhoods also tend to have like things that people really like as far as like maybe amenities within the neighborhood that you can't always find in an older development. So, you definitely have a lot of interesting things to think about between resale and new construction in the area.
Yeah, and to even pull the new construction down a little further, I think East Durham specifically is going to be a really big driver of some of this affordable new construction, especially new construction that is low. Like a lot of new construction, you got to go on the outskirts of town. Durham is going to be, especially East Durham, is going to be a big pusher next year of affordable new construction that's really convenient to a lot of different areas. It is, when you drive around some of those East Durham areas, it is substantial, the number of neighborhoods that are being cleared out right now. It's incredible.
It is. We'll have to do a whole video just on new neighborhoods in Durham, because it's overwhelming how many permits are being pulled.
It's pretty wild. The other prediction that we have for 2025 is we think price appreciation is going to continue to outpace the national average. So this area in general has seen price growth that is really outpacing what we see on the national side. So obviously we talked about what the national expectations are for next year, around the 2 to 3% price growth. I think we're going to see our area in general outperform that, which again, if you're a seller, that's a great thing. Your value in your home is growing. If you're a buyer, it makes it a little more challenging, especially with high rates. I think the third thing we're going to see next year is a really hot spring and early summer market. So some folks sometimes ask, when does the spring market begin? It really starts as soon as the new year begins.
Yeah, it does.
You start to see that competition pick up. And last year, what I mean by last year is 2024. So this year, technically, rates were right around 8%, and we saw an incredibly hot few months to start the year off.
Yeah, like February was insane.
It was unbelievable. Now it stopped really early. Like we're talking May, you started to kind of feel the slowdown starting, which is not typical. Typically, you don't feel that until later in the summer. But that was with rates in the 7s, near 8. I think this year rates are going to be in the 6s because that's where they are currently, or at least in the low 7s, probably worst case scenario. And so you're going to see, I think, a spring market that has significant demand in it, possibly more demand than what we saw this year. But I think in general, you're going to see a spring market that lasts longer than it did this year, which I think ultimately is a good thing. So in general, if you're looking to buy or sell in 2025, I think you're probably going to be looking, at least for the first half of the year, a pretty hot real estate market. So if you are looking to buy or sell in 2025, we'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can find our contact info below, and you can also find us on Instagram.
Yep, we'd love to have you follow along. You can find us at the Honeycutt Realtors, and you can also follow our second account if you're interested in restaurants and things going on in the area, the RDU Buzz, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, see you next time.